You're listening to episode 52 of the Confident Rider podcast with Jane Pike. Yay, I'm with Olivia Towers.
Hello.
Such a lovely example of a human being in front of me.
Not sure about that, but thank you.
I am. How are you?
I'm really good, actually. Although there's a pandemic going on, I feel like a lot of growth is going on at the moment, which is really cool.
That is really cool. So are you based at your usual stables haunt at the moment with the family? Like what's your situation looking like?
I was staying with my parents because obviously the horses are there when it all came out originally in the UK, and then a couple of weeks in I just didn't feel very comfortable leaving my house by itself. So I actually moved back this week, but I don't see anyone. I literally get in my car, drive there. So I'm back living by myself, which is actually really nice because I'd moved out of my parents in November, and I've really acclimatized to living by myself quickly. And so when I moved back with my parents, I felt like I was like 15 again.
I know. It's funny how we revert back.
I was like, oh my gosh, they're like shouting at me to like make my bed and stuff. I'm like, what's going on? But yeah, no, it's good. It is good.
I thought of you actually because I remembered seeing a social media post of you moving out, and then fairly shortly after it was like, no. Yeah, I wonder what Olivia's doing. So actually the point that I really want to start at is the ultimate bonding point that we have, I think, that you may not be aware of, but we both have a horse called Sausage.
Oh, I think I do know this. I think you told me about this. But is your horse actually called Sausage, or is it a nickname?
Actually called Sausage.
Oh, mine's just a nickname. And
that's
I feel
okay.
A bit sad. I want to change his actual name. His Instagram is Sausage.
Well, you know, I think that you're well within your rights to do that. But I understand the discomfort. You may not remember this. I think I'm older than you, but do you remember Cabbage Patch dolls? Have you ever heard of a Cabbage Patch doll? Quite ugly, massively popular in the 80s and 90s. Yeah, kind of like just a very disproportionate, fairly unattractive doll. I'm not sure why they were so popular. But anyway, my doll was called Valerie, which is absolutely no consequence to other Valeries out there in the world. But I really wanted to change the name. But I couldn't bring myself to do it because you get a birth certificate with these Cabbage Patch dolls. And I was like, I just can't do it. I can't change the name. So as someone that's lived with that regret for the last 20 years, feel free to change the name if you want to. Just go out there and do your thing.
They have a birth certificate. That is serious, isn't it?
It is really serious. Yeah, my sausage came as a sausage. I actually get asked quite often how she got the name She.
Oh, that's a bit brutal for a girl to be called Sausage, isn't it?
I'm just so used to it. So, well, what happened was the night before she was due to be born, the vet texted her breeder and said, I think your little sausage is going to be born tomorrow. And then it kind of like started.
Oh, that was it. It's like, so one of our first homebred, he is called Moley. His actual name's Zach, but he gets called Moley most of the time because when he was born, he got called Foley Moley. Oh. And then it stuck to Moley, and it's also Mole Man. And I feel so, he's such a stunning horse as well. And I'm like, he's called Mole Man. And I'm like, how did this happen? But he's 6 now and it's still there. So I think it's going to be for good.
It's funny because when you're kind of talking amongst yourselves, the name doesn't really register as what it sounds like if someone hears it for the first time. And then they're like, Sausage or Moley. And Zach is gorgeous.
Yeah. And the people on my like channels are like, what? Like, where did they... And they're like, how many horses do you have? Because they all have like 2 different nicknames and then their show name and then their actual name. And they're like, you need to write a list with all their nicknames.
Get with the program, peoples. Get with the program.
Yeah, keep up.
So to give a little bit of background info about you, you are so many amazing things. And I think lots of people will know you already if they're following you. But for those who we're introducing to you right now, do you want to give us a little bit of a backstory about who you are and what you do? And
so is it like an elevator pitch or can it be a bit longer?
I don't really do short sentences. You may have picked up, so feel free.
In a nutshell, I am 27-year-old dressage rider. Now can call myself a Grand Prix Dressage Rider, which is really exciting. I did my first Grand Prix last year. Yeah, was it this year? Anyway, not long ago. And I have been doing, I've been riding since I literally could walk. And then at 16, I left school and started in the equestrian industry. So I worked with someone for 2 years and then started up a yard with my mum, which was a steep learning curve, to say the least. And then on that journey as well, with my riding, I also started on social media. So the idea originally came because I just started learning about mindset and self-development, and nobody had really spoken to me about it before, and I didn't even know it existed. And I thought I thought my negativity, my self-doubt was like my character, like the characteristics you're born with. I was like, oh cool, that's like the way I am. And no one had ever questioned it. At school, no one spoke about that, which I think is insane. My parents aren't really, I think it's just their generation. They just don't talk about stuff like that. It's quite like a British thing for their generation. It's just like, get on with it. Mm-hmm. That's it. Yeah. So it's a weird reason how it actually came about. I had a complete meltdown with my competing, and I had 4 horses qualified for the regionals, and I had 2 tests on each. So I was like, 8 regional tests, surely I can go to the nationals. And basically it just all started to boil over, this pressure I'd put on myself. Mm-hmm. And I was like crazy. I was like, but it was all like frustrations and insecurities, but it was coming out, and I was like just crying all the time. I was getting angry, I was getting wound up. And so basically went to a regionals, had a complete meltdown. And my mum was like, oh, pulling the plug, like, you're just not doing this anymore. Because I think she was, for one, frustrated, but I think she was also embarrassed about how I was acting at shows, which I kind of completely understand. And there was nothing anyone could say to me to calm me down. And then I felt so much shame because I knew that. And I felt like a bad person, and all this. It was just this big, I always call it like this mist, and it was just always this mist around me. And I just felt like I was drowning in my like self-doubt and stuff, but I just didn't know that's what it was at the time. So I think I Googled how to change your mindset. So anyway, I just started to think there's like got to be something different here, because like, why is everyone else, not that everyone else is okay, but you see everyone else as being okay, don't you? And I was scrolling through Facebook one day, and it's so random, someone I met on a night out when I was 18 in Birmingham, he had started doing like motivational videos. He was a PT, and I just watched one, and I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And he did it now looking back on it, it wasn't even that good, but at the time I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I watched that, and then I messaged him, and I was like, what's all this about? Anyway, we started talking. I think he just wanted to, like, ask me out, but I was just like trying to like absorb his mindset stuff. So we started chatting, and he just opened this world that things could be different. And I just became like, I am a kind of obsessive character, which is good when I go for something good, but not great when I go for something bad. But in this instance, it was good. So I was like, let's do it. Yeah. So I just went like hell for leather on mindset. And so Alex was the guy's name, and he introduced me to Theo, who became my social media marketer guy. But anyway, I spoke to Theo, and because I said to Alex, I was like, I people need to know about this stuff. Again, I wasn't following many people on social media that were talking about it, because it hadn't been my culture. I was following like people who go out and get drunk, and like that was the age I was at. It was more like the party scene than the mindset scene. So
are they not the same thing? Gosh, the mindset scene is the party scene for me.
No, there's very different worlds. So anyway, I spoke to Theo about it once I'd started, the ball started rolling with the mindset stuff. And I just said, I need to tell people about this, because no one's talking about it in the equestrian world, especially. I was like, we all walk around shows all like silent and like thinking we all hate each other. And why is no one talking about the downs? Because like when I did look at riders' social media accounts, I was like, it's all sugar coated. Not that I thought it was sugar coated, I thought that's actually what was going on. I was like, they're not struggling, they're not insecure, they don't doubt themselves, all this stuff. And I was like, people need to know there's another side. So I just started posting out on social media, like just being honest. And my mum's always said the thing about me is I'm almost too honest. I remember when I was 16, I did something wrong where I used to work, and I went and told my boss before he found out. And he's like, I would have never found that out. And I went, I know, I just wanted to tell you. And he was like, what? I've just always had this thing of wanting to tell people how I feel, but there was a huge part of me of going, people aren't going to accept that, and I'm going to get judged for that, and I'm going to get ridiculed for that, and people are going to point at me and be like, you're weird and alone. So I just slowly started drip feeding it in, and the response I got was insane. Like, I think the first couple of months of my social media, it was so intense. It leveled out and calmed down a bit, which I'm kind of glad it did. But it was so intense with so many different riders who I look up to coming at me. They didn't put it onto social media, they private messaged me, because again, it's just, we don't talk about it out loud. They were like, I'm so glad you've said this stuff, and like, good for you. And it was really like, I felt like I just had a purpose. And my purpose was to be the voice of the realness, so to say. I guess, that's kind of where it all just grew. And then I actually became a Christian around the same time, which I really think is very interlinked. Like, my faith is a huge part of who I am. And I just really got, like, whether you believe in God or not, for me, I just got this thing that, so I opened the Bible up for the first time because someone had told me to. It was Theo, actually. I said, I want another self-development book, and he's a Christian. The funny thing is as well, Alex is a Christian. It's very odd. If you look through the path, I've been like bumped into a lot of Christians. Anyway, Theo's a Christian, and he told me to read the Bible for self-development. I was like, are you kidding? I was like, it's like an old, like, scruffy, like, ancient book. What the hell is going to be in that? Like, that's going to help me. So I opened it up and read a verse, and it's basically about like the narrow and the wide path. And a lot of people would choose the wide path, which is like the easy path. And some people would choose the narrow path, which is harder, but it leads to like life. And for me, in that moment, it was just God being like, it's going to be hard, but I want you to like speak the truth and put it out there. And then that, for me, like, when you think the creator of the universe has told you to do something, you run with it. Well, I did anyway. And I just ran with it. That's how my social media stuff grew. And then, it's just sort of been going on from there.
I almost feel like the creative voice that you talk about, like that kind of drive or inspiration, that sort of flash, for me, and I think it's the same for you, given what you've just said, it feels like, okay, I kind of know this, but it's almost like not a choice. Like, once you realize the thing that you want to do, even though you recognize all of the stuff that comes with it, it's like there's a drive that seems to be kind of outside of you that takes you in that direction. So that's really, really cool. And the social media side of things, I mean, that's kind of exploded into so many different areas, but not without its pitfalls at the same time, I think. And you're also vlogging for the FEI now, is that right? Am I right?
I've been a guest vlogger for the FEI. I think I started late in 2018, and I was so shocked when they messaged me, and they were like, we really like how open you are and how you talk about mindset, and that's quite unique. And I was like, I find it mind-boggling that it's unique. And they just said they really liked how I did everything. But then when I made the first video, I was so stressed because I had never made a video for anyone else, and I started, it's easy when you do it for yourself, but I remember the first video I did for them, I was so nervous. And Paul, who I deal with at the FEI, who sent me a message, he's like, it's really good. He's like, you just need to not, sound like you're like scripting it. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry.
It is hard, that. It's really hard. Yeah.
But luckily now I work with Theo, is my videographer for the FEI. And like, because of the relationship we've built up over 3 years, he's almost like a dad figure to me. So he knows me super, super well. And so I think that's where we create very good stories. And I think that's what the FEI like. We bring in a lot of, so it's like when we go to the shows and stuff, we went to Rotterdam to film the Europeans. And we don't just film it and go, oh, here I am doing this and do that. We put a story. So we basically say, like, we talk about my journey and talk about how it's inspiring me and how I used to struggle watching like riders like this because I didn't feel good enough. And that is what really captures people, is when you put a story to a video instead of just being like, here's me brushing my pony. Not that that's not great, because the day-to-day vlogs I do, I can't storyboard them because it's too much to do. But the FEI ones, like, we actually smash it out of the park with those ones. They're so good.
That's
I love it.
Awesome. So awesome. I'm always not shocked. I've come to not be shocked by it, but especially in the beginning, when people would join my membership program, one of the things that would commonly come up is like, oh my, I can't believe other people feel this way. Like, I thought I was the only one. And everyone does think they're kind of these little orbits in their own universe that are struggling with the doubt or the self-criticism and all of those sorts of things that kind of get us down. And it's even just the acknowledgement that you're not the only one. It's like opening the damn walls. It feels like such a liberation to actually do that. Yeah. So the horsey side of things, tell us what's happening in your horsey world, because you've got a lot going on at the moment.
Wow, yeah, there is a lot going on. And I feel like in the last year, I've really, because when I started the social media, I probably neglected the horses a little bit because I wanted to build social media so much. But actually now what I found is that I learned so much about mindset, self-development from the horses that it just goes hand in hand beautifully if I balance it. So what I'm really working on now is just I just put a lot more into my horses. And I think originally I was nervous too, because I was so scared that I wasn't going to get where I wanted to, that I basically was like, oh, I don't want to say I want to be like a really good rider, because what if I don't get there and then it's like a failure. But now I kind of look at it differently. Instead of going like, I want to go to the Olympics or I want to be like compete here, I go, I'll literally want to become the best horsewoman I could possibly become. And with that, I know there'll be competitive success, because it's like, if the horses trust me and our bond's good and I train them well and their bodies are going well, you know, they're supple, they're loose, they're over their back, they're moving, of course they're going to do well in a show. Like, that's what it is. And I think people forget that with dressage, that actually it is about the training of the horse. It's not how big can my horse move. Unfortunately, a little bit, it has gone a little bit that way, but you still can't take away the fact you could have a massive moving horse, and if it's not behaving, you're not going to get the marks. And especially at Grand Prix, you actually see it a lot more. There's not much trot work. There's a lot of passage PF and extended trots, but there's not much normal trot. So you can actually get away with having a horse with a smaller trot. And it's, you know, you get, if you do a good canter pirouette, you get the mark. If you do your wands, you get the mark. Whereas at novice, you know, you can still ride a good 20-meter circle. If the horse isn't cantering like Allegro, you're not going to get the 10, are you? Or you're not going to get a good mark. And so I actually find it's better the higher up you go. So with the horses, I've got a string of them. So we've got 11. One of those is our brood mare, so she's not in work. She's just had a foal actually, which is really exciting, and he's called Chief.
Oh, Chief. Delicious creature.
Yeah, so cute. And then we have 2 2-year-olds, and then I have a 4-year-old, 2 5-year-olds, 2 6-year-olds, and then an 11-year-old, and Wilf is 13. Yeah, that's everyone. Yeah, it's like basically when we started with the horses, there's no chance that I could ever afford the quality of horse I need if I bought it older. And also what I found out is, you know, you don't know what they've done. You don't know their vet history. You don't know their past. You don't know their mental past. You don't know what traumas they've come into. And it's pretty, you know, a horse can get traumatized if they fall into the wrong hands pretty easily, and it's quite hard to undo. And that's something I faced with past horses I've had. So you don't know any of that. You don't know their character as well, so it takes time, and then you're trying to take over from a different rider's way of riding, and it just
I totally get you. It's much easier to start with a blank slate than undo problems. I learned that.
A wall and like spraying off graffiti.
Exactly.
Which is not great. So we buy them. So we breed one a year. We've tried to breed one a year, but Paris actually got an infection, so that's why there's a bit of a gap. So Molly is 6, he's our first homebred. Then you had Belle, who was 5, she was our second. Then you have B, who is 4, and then you have this gap, and there's Chief. But we try and basically, either breed one and then buy one as a foal or a yearling, because I can buy that, and I bought the last 3 horses. I can save up enough money to do that, and I would never spend more than like 8,000 on a horse, because, well, for one, I can't afford anymore. And 2, like, it just, I think there's some really amazing horses out there in this country, in my country, for that money. So that's sort of what I do, and then they just grow up on our yard, and then they get sent away to get backed, but only for like a week, and then I just jump on, just because I never got taught how to back a horse, and I really would want to be in an environment with an expert, with someone who's done it, doing it that way, and I just don't have that opportunity, so I just send them away to an eventer. He breaks them in. They go in the orchards with his older horses. They're not put on the bit. They're like, they can trot up on the roads. And that for me is all they need to do. They don't need to be going around like, ready for a test. And then they come home, and I ride them once at home, and then I turn them away for a couple of months. Just so I ride them once at home, so they kind of, I kind of want to get them where they're in it. And then I turn them away, and then I just get back on them and ride them in drips and drabs until I'd say the work gets a little bit harder, maybe like 5.5, 5 probably. Yeah. When I say hard, not that hard, like 20 minutes max riding. And then the 6-year-olds, that's when it starts picking up. Yeah, but I just think it's important the youngsters have a lot of time to. I think so as well, especially from my experience, and I don't have as much as yours, but the bigger the horse, like it's not so much about the physical maturation as the mental maturation. I think really around 6 is when they start to, this is very generally speaking, start to be able to like connect their body and mind and actually like handle some of the bigger experiences. So it very much depends on the horse's conformation and their brain, and I think each horse, like each human being, has to be treated as an individual. You can't generalize horses, because I've never come across a horse that's the same as another horse. On the surface you could say they are, but they're not.
Well, it's like having children. Like my two come from the same formula, and I'm like, whoa, that's a completely different combination. And I've got horses that have the same sire, and they are completely different.
We have that. So Belle's actually not, she's average talent wise, and then B, her younger sister, is insane, and they're from the same mother and father, and I'm like,
that's tough, that sibling rivalry, isn't it, when one's a supermodel and the other's like
we thought Belle was so pretty when she was younger. I've taken more photos of her. She was like the prodigy child, and then B, we kind of like, it's sort of like we were bored of having our own breds. We were like, just another one. And she sort of was just, I think my mum broke her knee at the time as well. So it was all up in arms with that. And we were just like, another foal. And actually she's turned out to be like the best one. So
the others peaked early. Always a massive fear of mine. Oh dear. So how has your competitive experience, not in terms of results or horses necessarily, but how you feel about yourself in that environment and how things roll out, how has that changed over the last few years? So like before, you described the self-doubt and the
look, it 100% changed, but it was not like we started here and it progressively went up. No, it was like if you put a pen on paper and went that's sort of how it went, and now you can see it's gone up, but like if you follow the line, it's like up down, like all over the place. So I just think when people think about like, I'm going to change my way of thinking, I think they can be put off when they hit a hurdle where they go like back to their old self, so to say, and they can be like, it's not working. It's not that. It's just if you think about it being like, it's like the pathways, isn't it, in your head? Someone described it to me once as like, it's like if you walk through a crop field and there's people keep walking through this track, it gets like grained in, and you're changing that. So it can be easier to go back to that path again, but it doesn't mean that, what you've just worked on is wasted. You just got to get back on the other path. So I always try to remember that. I went through every single like thing you possibly could around mindset. Like I have, I've had burnout, which led to depression. I've had severe anxiety. I've had like low like everything, the classic thing when you go to a counselor and then you've got like black and white thinking, you've got like magnification. That's it. Yeah. All these different things they talk about. I literally could say I probably had every single one, because I just kept hopping and changing and switching and like finding my way. But I think when I started to chill out a little bit more, that actually is when the mindset really flourished, because I looked a little bit at mindset as like a end destination and this thing that needed achieving. And then when I stopped looking at it like that and start looking at it as like a journey and it will never finish, and then started realizing if I took my time more and that I had rest, and that like the biggest thing for me was learning to not, like, I call myself a recovering perfectionist. Learning to not be a perfectionist was huge, like completely changed everything, and stopping myself from thinking black and white. That's when the competing became easier for me, because again, I wasn't so wound up about results, and if it didn't go well, I didn't think I was a terrible person. I still get like, so I had my regionals before lockdown, and I did get really frustrated because I took Molly, who's our homebred, and he's probably the best horse I own, and I was adamant he was going to do well. And I didn't put, like, there wasn't the pressure I'd put on myself before. Like regionals, since, you know, that story I told you, regionals were a big deal for us every time we went back. And it was always regionals that went wrong, to the point when me and mum just started laughing. So this is ridiculous. But anyway, yeah, so Molly, I'd done everything. I feel like everything had gone really well beforehand. I'd stayed calm, I'd pushed him. Because what happened as well is when I was calming myself down, I actually killed off my competitive side a little bit, because I'd either be competitive and like angry and frustrated, or calm and not competitive. I found it very difficult to find this middle ground. Anyway, for this show, I felt like I found this middle ground. I was competitive, I pushed the horses, but in a nice way. And he went in, and it was the first time he'd been there. He had a tiny spook at the beginning, but apart from that, I felt like, yes, nailed it. His walk's a little bit fragile, but then you don't think about that when you're going through the test as a rider. It's hard to analyze what the judges are thinking, because you're thinking about what it feels like. So I'm like, he feels really good in the rain, he feels really through, he feels this, that was a good transition. And what they're looking at is like, did she do it on this marker? Is it, you know, all this stuff. And so I came out and I was like so happy, and I was like, yeah, patting him, and I was like, come on. And then went to the lorry, and I get nervous when I think I've done well. That's when I'm like, and mum was like, well, because mum gets nervous as well, but she'll do it in more of a thing of, she doesn't want to get excited, so she plays it down, and that's her coping mechanism. So anyway, then we start bickering, because I'm like, you didn't think it was good, and she's like, well, you did do this wrong, and I'm like, oh. And then I went and looked at my score, and it was like, what did I get? 68? And I was like, what? Because there are people who, so the novice class is a hot class in the UK, because everyone brings their like good youngsters out, or sometimes not even such youngsters. I would think I was like 7th or 8th, and I was like, what? And I was like, what do they want from me? I was like, this is the best horse I have. I watched the test. I was like, yeah, really good. I sent the test to my trainer, and he was like, that's really good. And we just had a chat about it after, and he's like, Olivia, you just, you know, you did your best, and you've got to realize you're in a sport that it is personal preference. Like, that's all I can say. And he was like, of course, you know, the walk's a bit fragile, that will have lost you marks, we can work on that, all this stuff. And at the end of the day, you just have to go, like, I've put myself in that arena, I've given it my all, the horse has given it its all, and it just wasn't good enough on that day. But that's not a reflection on me being a bad rider or the horse not being trained well. It's just that circumstance. Maybe if I'd cantered one stride later, or earlier, that it could have been different. But I think if you start winding yourself up about those things, you just get too in the fog.
In my mind, the story finished at the point where you were like super stoked with the test. I'm like, you're done, like you're done there. And I think it's really important to have your own definition of success, because as soon as we hand over to outside sources, which is the same in all competition, right? It's so hard. And not to say that you don't care, but you have to have your own barometer, because it is so subjective. So yeah, that excitement, I'd let yourself be excited. Marinate in that good stuff, I reckon.
It's a balance as well, isn't it? Because like, I am competitive, and I don't want to hide that side of me. And I think not to be ashamed that I'm competitive.
It's not about not being competitive. It's just not attaching your self-worth to the result. So,
oh gosh, yeah.
So it's like the caring part and the competitive part is the heart part to me, and the result part is kind of outside of your outside of your
Yeah,
zone.
so
Yeah.
true.
So it's
So true.
so what are the aspirations that you have? Where would you like to take things with your horses?
With the horses, so I mean, like, so I'm now a Grand Prix rider, so that was one of my big things I wanted to do. I think the main thing for me is learning, and I'm really lucky now that I've started doing the groundwork, because I feel like that's a huge thing for this. Learning to get the horses to be as athletic as they can and as well trained as they can, but in a way where they feel relaxed and not off adrenaline. Because you see a lot of horses doing like massive passage piaffe, but it's all off adrenaline.
Yeah.
That for me, I'm like, that's not really how I want to go about it. So I want to find a way. So I just started doing the TRT method with Tristan Tucker. And there's someone in the UK called Claire Gallimore, and she trained with him for 2 years, and she's showing me all this groundwork stuff. And it's fascinating, like hugely fascinating. I feel complete novice at it, but it's already changed the way the horses are going already. So I think, I'm not in a rush to become that person. I've literally got a lifetime to become that horsewoman. I think it's a funny thing, isn't it? And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, about how I feel about goal setting and if I think it's actually a good thing. I think with horses, there's a fine line with goal setting.
I've done away with it personally. I don't teach it in my programs anymore. Yeah, I don't teach it. There's another way of going about it, but not specific goals, because it very much creates a linear idea in people's minds of a pass-fail test, and then there's goal shame attached to it, and there's even the other aspect is that people don't set goals in the first place because they're afraid of not being able to see them through, so they keep themselves in this really contained place.
I personally think what I do now is I run off more. Because a lot of people say goals are your motivation, like that's what's going to get you to do something. I think habits are actually the only way. I think motivation comes and goes. You can't be like, I just need to be motivated to do that, because you're gonna hit a week or a day or a month where you're like, I cannot be asked. If you have good habits in place, and you give yourself little rewards for doing those habits, then I think you'll just absolutely nail it. So like my habits, for example, would be to ride the horses. So like, for example, today I was tired because I've had an insane week. And I went to work mucked out, which is fine because I can do that on autopilot. And then I was like, I have 6 horses to train, but I am in such a habit that I give my all to each of that horse individually, that it didn't need motivation because I didn't have any this morning. And actually all the horses went really well. They all got a lot out of it. And that for me, if I'd gone into this week going, right, this goal is I have to do this, I'm going to look at that and be like, ugh. Whereas like, if I think it's just a habit, it's a little bit like healthy eating, isn't it? Like it just becomes a habit.
Yeah. As well, I think that we're not very good at kind of honouring natural cycles of expansion and contraction, and when you're able to
of life.
Start to like regulate and give yourself rest and all of those sorts of things, and just let the accelerator off at times, able to sustain a rhythm.
I was like 2 very different people from where I was, not this time last year because I completely burnt out. Just before that, I was so regimented and insane, and I did this thing called the 5 a.m. club. And I'm not saying that is bad, because actually it works for a lot of people, but I was getting up at 5 o'clock and had to do 20 minutes exercise, 20 minutes reading, 20 minutes reflection, bam, then I'd do my emails, and then I'd start riding, and I was like, productivity all the time though, right? Not allowed to have a whoa moment. And then when I had my meltdown of last year, my friend's a counsellor, and I didn't go to see her. I just went there for a cup of tea, and I ended up just breaking down. And she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm so annoyed with my emotions because they get in the way, and I just wish I was like a robot because I'd be more efficient. And she was like, okay. But she's like, do you think that's what life's about? And I was like, well, it's just not efficient having like down times, is it? Or having rest. I'm like, it's not productive. And she's like, okay, Olivia, I think we need to have a few sessions. I basically from that have learned that, if you look at the world, you've got day and night, you've summer, spring, autumn, winter, you've got like, if you look at the moon, like literally everything in the world is showing you that there's downtimes, there's uptimes, there's productivity, there's rest.
And rest
it's
is productive
normal.
as well.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. And when you start looking at rest as like productive, and, you know, I think a little bit, my parents are super hardworking. And I think that's just obviously where it's fed from, is, you know, which is great to have that installed in you. But now on a Sunday, they'll be like, can you go and do this? I'm like, no, like I don't do anything on a Sunday. And again, like looking back at my faith, if you look at Christians called the Sabbath, which is our day off, it's actually really good practice to not buy things on the Sabbath, to not try and accumulate things, to not try and sell it. Basically, just I have enough, and I'm going to enjoy what I have from life, and I'm going to look back at my week or like my life, and be like, look what I've created. Because again, if you look at God, that's what he did when he created the earth. That for me is so nice. Just have a day and like, I don't need anything else. Because I used to either go like shopping, or be like, I'm going to buy this, and think that's cool, time off. But then I was like, I don't have enough. And now I've bought those shoes, I want that dress. And now I have that. And you then end up like, instead of just being grateful for what you have and chilling out.
I love that.
Yeah.
So the social media side of things, because for a little while you had a break or a respite from the blogging and that side of it. Are you back in swing, or have you found a better rhythm for that, do you think, in a way that's sustainable?
Yeah, I really have been looking at my business plans and looking to turn the social media more into a business. And again, I used to have some serious, what I now call, after listening to this book called Chopreneur, they're called money blocks. So I used to think if you earned money, that it had to be done in like a dirty way. And what I meant by that is like, someone's going to lose out if I earn money. And I felt bad asking for money, and I felt bad asking for people for money from my like things that I want to help people with. And now I've actually realized you can have like a win-win. And I spoke to my community about it the other day, about putting more ads and promotion onto my social media, and they were like, go for it. And I was like, oh, I thought they'd hate it. So I'm now basically looking at like, as me as like a brand, like how I can earn money without burning myself out. And social media is actually a huge part of that. So I am going to look at like the sponsorship, the promotion stuff, but that takes time to build up. So yeah, social media with money takes a while. I think people think it comes quite easily. It doesn't.
It really doesn't.
Yeah. So that's a little bit what I'm doing with that. And then my teaching, I'm looking at now sort of finding a way where I don't have to burn myself out, basically, with the teaching. Because what I was doing, I was traveling far away from home to do 2 days teaching, coming back, like finishing a full day's teaching, driving 4 hours home, and I was absolutely like done in. And I was like, this can't be sustainable. So I was like, I need to find a way. So yeah, what I'm actually doing is creating an e-course. This is the first time I've ever told anyone this, by the way. So it'll be
my secret way of weaseling out information from the psyche.
Yeah. So whenever this gets aired, I'm hoping I've already said about it, but it doesn't matter either way. No, I'm basically creating an e-course because in my business, I wanted to make something that was saleable. Like I was saying to you at the beginning, I wanted to create something which I could put all my energy into, like really put my all into it, and then it can go on. Whereas what happens with teaching is you put your all into that, and then it's gone. Like that person's taking that information in, of course, but that's it, it's gone. And that for me as a person, as a character, I can't not put my all into something. And I just found it was quite draining, and I'm quite introvert, so I actually struggle when I've dealt with a lot of people in a day. It takes me a long time to recover.
Very peoply out there, very peoply.
I know, get away from me. So the social media and the business side of stuff is definitely evolving at the moment, but the main thing with social media, stepping away from the business side of it, actually now linking the business side of it, will be to inspire people, because what the e-course is basically built around, it's called, get ready for this and you'll love this because I spoke about it at the beginning, it's called Lift the Mist. So you know when I described the regionals, that the mist for me, that's what it feels like, foggy, hazy. So the e-course is called Lift the Mist, and it's basically going to be like all my experiences, everything I've learned and advice about that, and it's going to have like tasks in it, it's going to have videos, it's going to have basically everything that I've learned as a professional rider, as a coach, as a human, bam, put it into a course. And of course it's not going to be a quick fix, and that's what I really want to explain to people. It's not, you're not going to do the course, like if you want to, you're not going to do the course and suddenly be like, bam, like cool, I'm fixed. It's not, it's me giving my experiences out there, and kind of showing people that, one, they're not alone. Two, I think it's nice to have like the equestrian side in there, because a lot of stuff isn't equestrian based that I've read. So I think it would just be super useful. People seem to enjoy what I put out on social media at the moment, so it's just going to be a more intense package, so to say.
Very exciting. That's so exciting. So what's your favorite, do you have a favorite mindset tip or quote, or is there something that you always go back to that you hold in your mind? I know if I got asked that question, I'd have to hide under the table because I don't have like one thing. So feel free to completely disregard it.
I think that the one huge thing that I've learned is I am enough, exactly the way I am now. I was enough when I was 16. I was enough when I was, like, I've always been enough, because I think every single human is enough. And they don't have to achieve anything. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to be anything. You are enough because you are you. And I think once you get that, that's when, ironically, you can do more things. I think a lot of people strive for their identity in success, in their body image, in a relationship, like from a partner. The problem with that is that thing will never hold up to your expectations, and it will let you down. So you can't hold your self-worth in something else. You have to have, like, you know, you have to know that you are enough just the way you are, not because of that perfect marriage, not because of that medal that you won, because stuff can get taken away from you so easily in this world. Like, I think it's quite an illusion if you think that that thing is what's holding you together, because it can go like that. Like, you know, when you look at people who have had loved ones that die, like, it can just go like that. And I think if you feel like happy and secure in yourself and you are enough, then I think the world can hit you with a lot of stuff. And of course it's going to be awful, but you're going to get through it.
I love that. Yeah, I completely agree. So if people want to find you or explore more of what you have to offer, where is the best place for them to hit you up?
So my Instagram is blowing up at the moment, so that seems to be the place to be.
Instagram.
It's weird. I think 700 people have followed me in the last 4 days, and I was like, I don't know where this has come from. But yeah, so Instagram is Towers432. That's the only out of theme name I have. And then the other ones are Olivia Towers Dressage, and the podcasts are Olivia Towers Podcasts.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation.
It's been fun.
Yay. And, you know, go Team Sausage, basically.
Yay.
And Sausage. Eagle and Zach and Joey and Barbie and Rufus and Chief.
Oh, look at you doing the research.
Is that most of them? Did I hit most of them? Yeah, that's the extent of my research.
I love it.
All right. Thanks so much, Olivia. Team, thanks so much for hanging out with me and Olivia today. Once again, if you want to get in touch with her, you can find her by searching Olivia Towers Dressage on all social media platforms. And if you're hanging out on Instagram, Olivia432 is the handle you are after. If it's me you're looking for, confidentrider.online is the place to get in touch. That's it from me for now. I'll catch you in the next episode.